Well, hello everybody, and welcome to our EV 101 webinar. My name is Olivia Burns. I'm an environmental specialist with Clark County's Office of Sustainability. Thank you for joining us today. Very excited to have with us Paul with the Nevada Electric Vehicle Association, also an All-in Clark County Climate Ambassador. Paul will give us an up-to-date understanding of EVs, covering everything from environmental benefits, financial incentives, to charging basics. So thank you, Paul, for coming on. Before I pass it over to Paul to get us started, I'll just share a few tips to enhance your presentation experience and help you navigate the platform more easily. You can translate the entire meeting page and or the live audio into another language by clicking the translate button and selecting your preferred language from the drop-down menu. Closed captions are also available for this presentation. Click the CC button at the bottom right corner of the screen to turn them on. If you'd like to hear audio by phone, you can call in using the 855 number provided above the present page. To interact with us during the session, feel free to use the chat box next to the live stream to submit any comments or questions you may have. If a question comes up in mind during the presentation, please drop it in the chat and we will address them at the end. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on our county's YouTube channel after the session. Lastly, if you experience any issues viewing or hearing the presentation, please refresh your browser page. Now I will pass it over to Paul to get us started.
Great, thanks, Olivia. Let me share my screen very quickly here. That should do it for us. Great. Well, welcome for coming to our session today. We wanted to share with you, of course, the latest things and the basics, honestly, on what is an electric vehicle. My name is Paul Bordenkircher. I am with the Nevada Electric Vehicle Association, and we do these presentations all the time with in cooperation with Clark County, and look forward to giving you some good information. So let's start with the basics. Let's talk about EVs, as it's often renamed, or electric vehicles. Well, there's more than just one type. Really, any vehicle that uses electricity in its drivetrain can be classified as an electric vehicle. The main ones that you will see first would be known as a hybrid. A hybrid has both a gas and an electric drivetrain. However, a straight hybrid has no plug-in. The engine does all the work of charging the battery and so forth. The next type is called a plug-in hybrid. Same situation, gas and electric involved. However, the vehicle does have a charge port, so the batteries can be charged from home power or a charging station. And then, of course, the ones we typically talk about most often are the fully electric vehicles. Teslas, Hyundais, a number of brands make them. There is no engine, there is no gasoline involved. First question usually we get is, of course, how am I able to charge an EV? Well, essentially, there are three basic levels in order to charge. The first one is a good old-fashioned household wall outlet. So 120 volts, depending on the charger, draws anywhere between 8 and up to 15 amps, depending on the size of the battery and how much charge your battery needs. Most needs can be done overnight, especially in a commuting situation. As far as the power draw goes, it's somewhere, depending on the charger, somewhere between a vacuum cleaner and, say, a coffee pot. So that's level one. Now, if we move on to slightly beefier charging for home, we have level two. Level two uses a 240 volt outlet, very similar to what you'd have on an electric dryer, electric stove, similar to that. 240 volts can actually go anywhere between about 16 and up to as much as 80 amps. A car can typically get a full charge within 48 hours on that. I know a lot of homes in especially the Las Vegas area have washers and dryers and things like that in the garage. If you have that situation, going to level two charging is as simple as buying a what's called an outlet splitter, and you could keep your dryer or whatever device in the garage plugged in and just add the charger to that. So that's level two charging. Now, level three is the one you normally see around town at major locations, at shopping centers, casinos, and whatnot. These are referred to as level three, or more commonly DC fast charging. This is the only one that actually goes DC power to your battery. Level one and level two are, of course, converting AC to DC. So there's a little bit more there. Those are, of course, level threes are the highest power, 400 volts. Some are 800 volts or more, anywhere between 50 and 350 kilowatts or more, depending on the type of vehicle, because it does vary car to car. A vehicle can be charged from as low as 10% all the way up to 80% in somewhere around 20 minutes. So it is the fastest of the three. And level three is not the type that you will find at a home. The power requirements are just too much for home power. Now, let's talk about the connections. Unfortunately, the whole world of EV charging isn't all one connector. So we've got a couple different ones, but that world is getting better right now. The first one you'll see most commonly in electric vehicles today are what's referred to as the CCS combo. It's the most common right now, but we're going to talk about the Tesla charger and where that's changing. That particular charger uh, graphic you see there to the right shows the connector that will do level one, two, and level three charging through that same outlet. The part I've circled in orange, your car or the charger you're working with may only have that connection. That's a connector that will do only level one or level two. The two larger connectors at the bottom are what bring it to level three charging. The next connector, next most common, is the Tesla charge port, or the geeky term for it is the NACS charger. These are on all Tesla vehicles. Uh, they are available at all superchargers, which again is a level three. And if you ever go to a hotel or somewhere and they have Tesla chargers, they're what referred to as destination chargers, and they're going to be at that level two speed. These are typically 100 kilowatts and more. The destination chargers can vary a bit more than that. The good news with all of this is that virtually all major automotive brands in the United States have pledged to switch to these connectors. And there are some that are out there already. There's some models by Hyundai and I believe Kia have already switched to the Tesla connectors. Uh, Next, the question we get most commonly is how much does it cost to charge? Am I going to really save money versus gasoline? So we'll talk about some of the basics right now. Level one charging, again, typically plugging into a normal outlet at home. If you have no special program, I believe NV Energy's rate currently right now is between 16 and 17 cents a kilowatt. So you multiply that by the number of kilowatts that your car needs, and you have an idea of how much it will cost. For example, I have a Kia Soul. It's a shorter range vehicle. It has about 140 miles of range and a 30 kilowatt battery. So 16 cents times 30 kilowatts is roughly $4.80. So I can fill my car up and go roughly 130 miles on less than $5 in energy. NV Energy also has experimented with something called a time of use program. This allows you to charge, for example, at night, late night hours, and you get an overall lower rate for your charging. By the way, that is for the entire home during those periods of time. NV Energy is experimenting with some new systems that could be changing in the future, so don't hold me to that. Next, you have level two charging in a lot of different places. It's very common now at shopping malls. Most of the hospitals in town have level two charging, commercial office buildings and so forth. And those are up to the vendor or the building owner, what their fees and policies are going to be. For example, the local hospitals, I know Mountain View Hospital, and there's a couple of others that charging is free for 2 hours at level two. And then a charge happens after that. Shopping malls, I believe downtown Summerlin charges $2 an hour for level two. So it varies. Level three charging, I can guarantee you right now, will always be paid. That will always be the most expensive because it is the most high power and it is a commercial type installation. Many of the major vendors in town, like for example, here in Las Vegas, we have Electrify America, we have EVgo, and there's a couple of charge point level threes. You're going to pay the most for that. That's straight up. I believe the current Tesla rate is something like 69 cents a kilowatt during peak hours, and it can vary. However, many of these companies have their own networks, they have their own app, and they come with a subscription plan. So those rates can be lowered. I believe Electrify America now has offered their subscription plan charging to 45 cents a kilowatt, which is a discount compared to the 60 cents or more it would be without a subscription plan. Now, the next thing, of course, where are they? Where can I charge my vehicle? Well, again, you're going to see this over and over in our presentation today. At home is probably the number one place to charge. If you imagine how much your car sits when you're home, if you have a normal 8 to 5 job, you drive to work, car sits there for 8 hours. That's another opportunity for charging, by the way. Then you drive home, and that car can sit from anywhere from 12 to 15 hours before you head back out again. So it's a very convenient place to charge while the car's not doing anything. Others are things while you're out and doing other things. For example, like I said, shopping malls. Most of the casinos now have charging available in their parking garages. Of course, the dealerships that sell EVs also have charging stations at their locations. The local utilities, like NV Energy, have charging stations available to the public on their property. Our public libraries in the area, many of them have charging available out in the parking lot. And of course, in Nevada, we have had funding for what they call the Nevada Electric Highway, which is putting in level 2 or level 3 charging a minimum of 50 miles apart on all the major highways in Nevada. So that is coming along. And of course, if anybody's ever driven to LA from Vegas, you also know there's a lot of major charging stations, for example, in Baker, California, and so forth. Lots of charging along the way there. How do you find those charges, however, is another issue. Um, there are a few key apps and websites that you can go to. Of course, if you've driven a Tesla, you know that the software is actually built into the car. You can program in, I am going to Reno, I am going to Salt Lake City, and the car will program and tell you where the charging stations are and where you'll need to stop. Other vehicles are starting to do that. My newer Kia has that in it already. I believe Rivian and some of the other ones are already doing that as well. If you're not that lucky, there are some uh, agnostic apps like PlugShare. PlugShare shares all available charging stations in the area. I like it the best because it doesn't care if you're Tesla or not or whomever. You can put in your vehicle, it will know which charge plugs and power that you can take, and it will only show you the stations that apply to the vehicle that you have. Also, again, like we were talking about earlier, ChargePoint, EVgo, Electrify America, and other companies have their own network apps, and they'll have special incentives on the pricing as well. They will also show you only theirs. For example, I have Electrify America I use quite a bit right now. It will show me where the stations are, if they're all busy, if any of them are out of service, and so forth. So it gives me additional details that I might not get from, say, the generic in-car navigation and charging station finders. Um, so one of the big things we talk about with electric vehicles, and usually, unfortunately, the perception is still the word saving and electric vehicles don't tend to be put together. But we want to explain that there are many ways that you will save time, you will save hassle, and yes, in certain circumstances, you can save a significant amount of money. But we'll get to that. Um, First thing, of course, going back to time. As I said, you're going to hear this a lot. Charging at home while you sleep or doing other things at home. That 12, 14, 15 hours your car sits at home or on the weekend can be used to charge the vehicle, and you don't have to spend the time going to gas stations on a regular basis and charging up. Level 2 charging is a way at different areas where you're out doing your normal chores. You're working, you're playing, you're running errands. So when you go to the shopping mall, you go to the casinos, at workplace charging is becoming more and more of a thing. My wife and I go to movies sometimes at Red Rock Casino, just down the street from us. They have ChargePoint free chargers available. So I can do it while I'm out doing my normal course of work. Saving money, again, charging at home is going to be probably your least expensive cost as far as any of the three levels of charging. Um, Again, if you enroll in any of the NV Energy time of use and other savings programs for electric vehicle, that can lower your cost even more. To give you an example, the first year that I had my electric vehicle, I extensively detailed all the charging I did, how much I spent, how many miles I went, and so forth. And I saw personally somewhere between an 80 and 90% savings on fuel. First year, I want to say it was around $1,200 that year that I saved compared to what I spent on electricity. Now, different situations depending on the cost of fuel. If you use level 3 charging a lot and so forth, your value savings may vary. Uh, again, on retail level 2 charging, many places still have it for free, or they have it free for a limited time, so you can save on a lot of it. Now, the third one, talking about maintenance and fuel together, there's a measurement that we like to use called lifetime cost of ownership. That means not just the cost of the vehicle, but the cost to maintain it, the cost to fuel it, the cost to repair things, and so forth. And what the studies have shown is that over the course of owning a vehicle, Electric vehicles in general are a much lower expense overall, a lower cost of ownership than gas or diesel vehicles. Part of it is the fact that there's very little maintenance to be done. I'll show you a slide here in a second where you'll see the difference in complexity between the motors that drive the vehicles. There's just far less to go wrong. For example, an average gas vehicle has somewhere around 2,000 moving parts in the drivetrain, just in the drivetrain. Electric vehicles are typically 100 moving parts or less. There is a certain model of Tesla, I believe it's the Model S, that claims to have only 12 moving parts in the drivetrain. That's a whole lot fewer things to go wrong. Other regular maintenance things that you no longer have anymore, of course, oil changes because you have no motor oil, because you have no gas engine. Things like radiator flushes, spark plugs, any of those kinds of things happen. Tires and brakes, yes, of course, because the car is a normal used car, and those are common expenses. However, electric vehicles typically have something that is called regenerative braking. And what that entails is magnets that are placed alongside the brake rotors. So instead of when you let off the gas, instead of hitting the brake and generating heat with the brake pads to slow down, the regenerative braking can use magnets to slow the vehicle down. And while it's doing that, it's actually putting energy back into the battery. So if you've ever heard the thing that EVs actually do better in city driving, that is partly true because of the regenerative braking. So every time I go to a stoplight, I actually get a little bit of my power back. And so it actually extends my range to be in stop and go traffic. And because of the regenerative braking, the brake pads themselves are used far, far less. I had one gentleman when I was researching my first electric, he had a Prius. He said he was doing his first brake change at 150,000 miles. That's how much less it can be. Again, everybody's situation is going to vary. The vehicles vary. So that's just an example of what kind of maintenance savings that you can have. Now, to talk about the maintenance and the complexity of the vehicles, this top picture is a standard BMW X5 gasoline engine. The bottom one is the motor in a Tesla. Does the exact same thing, moves the car forward. So you can see the difference in the level of complexity in the vehicles and how much less there is to deal with. Now, how do you save on hassle? Well, we're back to the big one again, charging at home. You can see this is a common theme. If you don't have the ability to charge at home, I will be the first to advise you. You may want to think again, a little more detailed about whether a fully electric vehicle is your choice. Again, obviously, with a hybrid, you've got the gas engine, it's less of a considerable issue. But if you can charge at home, an all electric vehicle is going to be your best choice in many or most situations. And again, you save time, you save the matter of how much time you have to go out and do it, or remember what your gas tank's at. You just plug in and it's taken care of. One of our other safety considerations we had, and is actually from one of our members. He bought his first electric vehicle, sort of at his wife's misgiving. She wasn't so sure about the technology, let her drive it for a while. And after a month, he asked her, "What do you think?" And her eyes got really big. And she said, "I love the fact that I don't have to go to some sketchy gas station in the middle of the night." And so there's a potential safety issue with them. Now, we can talk about another big safety issue since we're on this page, um, having to do with the batteries. I'm sure we've all seen the pictures and we've seen the news stories about battery fires. Here's the real scoop on it. Fact is, according to an insurance liability study, electric vehicles catch fire at a rate somewhere between, depending on the statistics, 20 times and 60 times less often than gas or diesel vehicles. Now, as I've always done these presentations and promised to tell the truth, unfortunately, hybrid vehicles catch fire at least at the same rate as gas vehicles, if not higher, depending on the research study you look at. So there are some considerations there. But again, we were talking about how to save money. And with the safety, you're going to save some peace of mind on the fact that you don't have to go to those gas stations. And that is essentially the basics of what we have. I hope that's helpful to you. And with that, Olivia, if we have any questions in the chat, let's fire away.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks so much, Paul, for leading today's EV 101 webinar. You always make things really easy and easy to understand. We do have a lot of great questions in the chat. And a shout out for anyone who wants to dive even deeper. We have a longer version of EV 101 coming up on September 23rd at 6 p.m. So if you just scroll past this live stream, you'll be able to register for that one. But let me go ahead and pull up the questions. All right, first question. What perks have you enjoyed driving an EV?
Okay, got to start off. I'm going to be biased because obviously I now have two. So know that going into it. The first thing that I really noticed, though, compared, my wife had a gas car up until about 6 months ago. And the first thing I noticed was the difference in the smooth acceleration. If you've driven a gas car, you step on the gas, the engine has to rev up, then that has to kind of connect to the transmission, and that has to translate to the wheels. With hers, it was always this very jerky thing of hitting the gas and so forth. That does not exist. In fact, I've heard this one when people try to disparage EVs. Well, it drives like a golf cart. And I say, yes, it drives very smoothly. You hit the gas and it just goes with no issues. So the surprising quickness of an electric vehicle is another. The very first one I had was a very inexpensive one. It was a Chevy Spark. They didn't make them for very long. Very inexpensive vehicle. And my biggest problem was spinning the tires because I had so much quickness and torque on the vehicle. The next that it was really a pleasant surprise to me was the quiet. Some people love the roar of the engine and they love the smell of the exhaust. I'm not one of those people. So I never enjoyed those parts anyway. But now the fact is the radio in my car sounds so much better because it's not fighting the sound of the engine and the other things with it. So those have been probably the biggest surprises. The third one that really caught me off guard after a couple months was honestly the smell. And not from me, when I'd stop at an intersection, not used to my car emitting anything anymore. If I have my windows down, I smell all the other cars. I found my nose got more sensitive to the smells that my car no longer makes. So there's things like oil stains in the driveway or in the garage. I don't deal with any of those anymore. So those are probably my biggest surprises.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul, for sharing those experiences. Um, some of the questions are kind of related. What didn't you know about driving an EV until you actually got behind the wheel?
First off, how much I'd like it. I really went into it in a terribly practical way. I'd moved back to Las Vegas. I didn't have a lot of money. And I sat down and did a bunch of homework on what was going to be the least expensive car. Now, my dad was a mechanic, so I know buying $1,000 car isn't necessarily saving money because that probably means it's got a whole ton of repairs. So I was talking about a reasonable used car and trying to find something that wasn't going to cost me a fortune, always having to bring it into the shop. And I kept coming back to electric vehicles. And that's how I ended up in one. And then all the other things came as the additional surprises on top of that.
Thank you. What do you think about Google and Apple Maps for finding charging stations?
Both are getting better. I will frankly admit I don't use either one of them. Partly because of the app now built into my wife's newer car. My older car doesn't have it, and my older car, like I said, a shorter range vehicle. I don't take that on the road anyway. That is a round town car. So for me, I know Google added it sooner. I think Apple just recently added it. I can't attest to the how good they are or not. I would have to test it out. Though Vegas is a good town, we've got a lot of charging in Vegas, and so it should be a good test. But no, I wouldn't absolutely rely on them. They're too new.
All right, thank you. Next question, just a few more. Have you participated in any local EV ride and drive events or sustainability fairs? What do you think?
Well, that's kind of cheating because, of course, as Olivia mentioned, I'm a climate ambassador with All in Clark County. So I do these events all the time. And as part of the Nevada Electric Vehicle Association, we actually work together on two major events a year. We do Drive Electric Earth Month now in April. And then upcoming, we have National Drive Electric Month. I got to say I'm right. In September or early October. We're working on a very big event. I won't sees it, but we expect it to be a stadium-sized event. How's that for a tease? So that will be coming up. And yes, we've done many of them, and we have a lot of good conversation with them. We see a lot of eyes opened. We don't sell to everyone. I'm the first one to say EVs are not necessarily for everyone. But coming down and evaluating them, I'll give you the straight truth. So if you're concerned about getting honest evaluations, come find me at one of the events and I'll tell you the truth.
Absolutely. All right, last question is what do you wish someone had told you about EV ownership before you purchased your vehicle?
I think the biggest thing for anyone is back to what I just said a moment ago. EVs are not necessarily for everyone. And when I say that, I do mean all electric vehicles. I think hybrids of whether it's the plug-in or the regular version are for everyone. I think they can use in every situation. I had one lady come to one of our events who said she regularly drives to Ely, Nevada. If you're from here, you know where that is, you know how far out it is. She was the very first person I said, you do not need an all-electric vehicle. The infrastructure getting there and back is simply not to that point yet. So that serves the point. Depending on where you live, you that may affect your situation. Again, within Las Vegas and commuting around, I think everyone should have an all electric vehicle. That's my biased opinion. But if you're doing a lot of traveling, you're going up to Reno, you're heading out to Wyoming, you're going other places, you can do it. There's plenty of people that do nationwide cross country traveling in an all electric vehicle, but not everybody's situation is going to match that. I actually grew up in northern Minnesota on the border with North Dakota. I would never tell any of my friends up there to buy an all electric because the infrastructure in that area is just not there. So the first thing I say is you need to assess your own needs. How many miles do you drive? This is another one we get all the time. Well, as soon as EVs can go 500 miles on a charge, then I'll buy one. My question back to them is, do you actually need that? And how, or do you need it once a year? You make one long distance trip. I know plenty of people that own an EV, and when they do the long trip, they rent a regular car, but they're saving all the money the rest of the year driving their other car. So it's understanding your needs. How much do you really drive in a week versus a year? How much are you really paying in gas? How much time do you really spend at the gas station, at the shop, getting those oil changes? So evaluating what you really need is probably the biggest thing I would suggest to anyone. Know what you need, and you won't be disappointed what you end up buying.
Great. Thank you again so much, Paul. That's all for today's questions. Thank you to the audience for being here today. And of course, very special thanks to Paul for sharing his expertise and his experience. Like Paul mentioned, we've gotten a ton of positive feedback from attendees who have learned a lot and feel more confident when exploring EV options from our other EV webinars, presentations, and events. More coming soon, so please stay tuned. We do have National Drive Electric Month coming up September 12th through October 12th this year. Very exciting because this is the first year it's been Drive Electric Month. In the past, it's been Drive Electric Week. But we celebrate EVs all year long, just like right now in July. So we don't have to wait till Drive Electric Month to learn a lot about EVs and experience them. So I really encourage everybody to stay in the loop for our upcoming events by visiting our website, allinclarkcounty.com/events. You could register there and stay in the loop with our newsletter that gets sent out every 2 weeks and following us on social media at Clark County DES. I've added some photos here from our past ride and drive events. So we're very excited to be working on some upcoming for you. Some events are already posted on our website. So like here's another EV 101 presentation happening during Drive Electric Month on September 23rd from 6 to 7 p.m. So if you want to get more information on EVs or you know somebody, your friends or family or coworkers are interested, please share this link with them so they could register for the upcoming webinars that we have. But that is it for today's webinar. Thank you again, Paul, and thank you, everybody.